As Taiwan prepares to head to the polls, the presidential candidates offer their visions of the country's future. We look at how the U.S. is handling a massive backlog in weapons that should have been delivered to Taiwan. Japan scrambles to find missing people from under the rubble after a massive earthquake rocked the country. Plus,
parents here in Taiwan are demanding the government acts to protect their children after a shocking case of a child stabbed to death in one of the nation's schools.
a warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. The final polls before Taiwan's presidential elections are in. They suggest the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, is likely to win a third straight term in power. Polling and publishing polls are not allowed in Taiwan in the 10 days before an election. The last poll by local media outlet ET Today puts the DPP's presidential candidate Ching at nearly 40% of the vote. Hou You-yi of the main opposition Kuomintang was at nearly 36%, while Ko Wen-je of Taiwan People's Party was at 22%. Polls by other media showed similar results. Managing ties with Beijing and how best to avert war across the strait looms large as Taiwan's presidential candidates enter the final days of campaigning. So all this week, TaiwanPlus will be focusing on the China factor. Joyce Deng brings us this report on how different views on Taiwan's relationship with China are shaping this year's presidential race.
2024 could see a new world order, with elections set to take place in at least 40 countries and territories this year, and Taiwan is one of them. Voters here have a shot to elect President Tsai Ing-wen's successor in less than 2 weeks, an outcome that will shape its fraught relationship with neighboring China. Beijing does not see Taiwan's self-rule as legitimate, a stance made clear through long-standing political and military pressure, which analysts say not only targets its leaders, but its citizens as well.
The main goal of the Chinese influence to our election or to our society is to make Taiwanese people convinced they are powerless.
President Tsai is hoping to hand over the top office to her VP, Ching, who Beijing sees as an even more dangerous advocate of Taiwanese independence than Tsai. Lai's repeatedly said his view is that Taiwan's future is up to its 23 million people, not Beijing, owning the fact he's not the Chinese Communist Party's preferred choice.
我们敬请国人能够支持中国最不喜欢的候选人。要让他能够高票当选，这个是粉碎中国介选最好的手段。
One of Lai's election rivals, New Taipei Mayor Hou You-yi, has vowed to restore friendlier ties with Beijing, which he believes is key to maintaining cross-strait peace. But he's been clear he opposes Beijing's one country, two systems strategy and is looking to his opposition Kuomintang Party's forefathers to guide his pledge to defend the Republic of China, Taiwan's official name.
是中华民国，我的妈妈这个国家保护着我，所以会守着清国先生的奉献跟牺牲，好好的建设我们的台湾。
Former doctor turned politician Ko Wen-je has been hailed as the less predictable third option for president. He's bidding to be an exception to what he's called a boring, traditional two-party system. On China, Ke also says his goal is to protect Taiwan's freedom and democracy. Taiwan's on the verge of a historic election that could see one party extend its rule past 8 years, the return to power of a more Beijing-friendly option, or a leader who could shake up the local and regional order. With all three candidates stressing that the Taiwanese people should decide their country's future, fulfilling that will be up to citizens as they show up to cast their vote on Election Day. Luffy Lee and Joyce Deng for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Defense Ministry has announced for the first time that a Chinese balloon flew directly over Taiwan. It was one of 2 balloons detected around Taiwan in the past 24 hours. The ministry also reported that 4 Chinese military aircraft were operating in the Taiwan Strait. It comes less than 2 weeks before Taiwan's national elections. China has ramped up its military pressure on Taiwan in what many see as an attempt to sway voters. Taiwan's Coast Guard is monitoring 2 Chinese tugboats that have refused to leave the country's territorial waters. The 2 boats pulling a crane barge were first spotted close to Taiwan's waters on Sunday and were warned away. On Tuesday morning, the boats were seen again and came as close as 3 nautical miles to Taiwan's southern tip. The Chinese boats said they were sheltering from rough conditions out at sea. The Coast Guard is continuing to track the vessels and keeping the military up to date on the situation. Taiwan is owed billions of dollars in weapons it has bought from the United States, weapons that would be crucial in defending the country from an attack. As part of a special series on defending Taiwan, Khan reports on how policymakers in Washington are working to resolve the backlog.
Taiwan, a vibrant democracy in the heart of Asia and home to more than 23 million people, is under threat. The island nation has to warn off Chinese warplanes and military ships operating around its territory on almost a daily basis. These missions are seen as practice for what Beijing says is its ultimate goal, taking control of Taiwan. For decades, China has threatened to invade Taiwan, which it claims as part of its territory, and it's been modernizing its military so it can do so quickly.
So right now, the only attractive scenario is one in which they don't really have to engage the United States. They take Taiwan quickly before the United States can come to Taiwan's aid. And that only works if Taiwan's military cannot defend the island for a few weeks.
To try and make it as difficult as possible for China to even attempt an attack, Taiwan has spent tens of billions of dollars on weapon systems from its largest ally, the U.S. Beijing spends almost 12 times more than Taipei on defense and has a much larger military than Taiwan. China has 11 times more soldiers, 6 times more fighter jets, and double the number of warships. This leaves Taiwan with little wiggle room on how it spends its defense budget.
So in order to be able to secure its, its territory, protect its national security, it needs to be really smart with its investments in sort of getting the maximum dollar out of each investment into defense.
But while Taiwan continues to boost its combat readiness, the country is facing a dilemma. Over $19 billion worth of weapons and systems are delayed. These are all purchased from the U.S., its largest weapons provider, and some of those purchases go as far back as 2019. They include systems like battle tanks, drones, rocket launching systems, artillery cannons, hundreds of missiles, fighter jets, and the list goes on. These delays are linked to supply chain issues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and limitations in the U.S. defense industry. Delegates from Taiwan's defense ministry recently traveled to Washington for security talks with industry leaders and urged them to speed up production. Speaking to TaiwanPlus, they say they are confident that the backlog will be resolved.
那美方对于这个所有军售的部分也成立一个专案的编组，来优化它整个一个军售的一个程序啊，是不是由专人专责来做一个协助，来做一个有效的管制？我相信在我们台美双方协助共同合作之下，有关军售这部分呢，应该可以达到我们所期望的最后的。
As the country waits, there are concerns that the failure to deliver these weapons could give China an advantage in any conflict. And it's a challenge that policymakers in Washington are aware of.
I think what we're seeing now is a recognition that the challenge and threat that China poses to peace and security in Asia is evolving, and US policy is evolving as a consequence. And it's the responsibility of our community, in cooperation with the US government, to evolve with it.
The weapons backlog is a problem that could be the difference between war and peace for Taiwan, and one whose solution ultimately lies in the hands of policymakers in Washington, not Taipei. Devon Tsai and Khan for TaiwanPlus.
As conscription periods for Taiwanese men increase to 1 year, the military is creating realistic combat conditions to train its new soldiers. Tiffany Wong reports.
Simulating war. New conscripts in Taiwan's military will now be experiencing the sights, sounds, and tensions of war through a new realistic training program. It's part of renewed initiatives to bolster Taiwan's combat readiness in response to growing military pressure by China.
在演练期间，采用射击机枪空包弹和数枚的 TNT 炸药，用来模拟战场上的真实环境，也在提升他战场的抗压性和心理素质。
The training will affect new conscripts born after 2005 beginning this year. They're the first cohort in over a decade to serve a 1-year mandatory service, up from the 4 months of service required since 2013. President Tsai Ing-wen announced the measures last year in order to step up Taiwan's defenses. Now, the Army's youngest conscripts will undergo 8 weeks of basic training before testing their skills on a battlefield obstacle course, meant to prepare them for the mental pressures of warfare.
枪声、炮声啊，或者是那个爆炸的声音等等，让他们实际有这样子的心理的体验。训练的时候，可能有一些实际上那个接近战场的一些这个训练，像射击的时候的那些行进训练啊，变换这个阵地啊等等。
Although it may be challenging, future Taiwanese conscripts say they hope the new, more intensive training will help them respond to situations quickly should war come.
炸弹在旁边先炸一下，就是不会受伤那一种，可能我们就比较有办法应对。
哪天真的战争来的话，那就可能会有更多的有那种经验可以去应对。
And despite the extended training time, these combat drills are meant to help prepare conscripts as best they can, with the aim of leaving the future of Taiwan in capable hands. Patrick Chen, Sam Hui, and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
On Done Taiwan Speak Up, we make you a part of the conversation.
I can't stand girls with a guy best friend.
Really?
I'm still wondering if it sounds Chinese enough.
It's very complicated.
I have to hide my skateboard every time.
Really? Why?
It's about freedom of speech.
People have the values themselves. It's personal choice.
A lot of people are not really ready to speak their truth.
Chen, Taiwan.
Chen, Taiwan. Speak Up. Every Tuesday, 8:10 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
We bring you stories from Taiwan.
Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus.
For more stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Start your weekend with a cup of coffee and a moment to reflect on what happened this week.
Hello and welcome.
We've got you covered, from defense and politics to high tech and the arts.
Not just to Taiwan, the whole world is watching.
You make the coffee,
we make the news.
Here's what happened on TaiwanPlus.
For more news from Taiwan and around the world, go to TaiwanPlus.com and download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A passenger plane was on fire on a runway in Tokyo after possibly colliding with a Coast Guard plane. The Japan Airlines plane was fully ablaze on a tarmac at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. The airline says all 379 passengers and crew on board were evacuated. Japan's Coast Guard says the jet may have collided with one of its fixed-wing aircraft. At least 48 people have died in a massive earthquake that struck Japan on New Year's Day. Reese Ayers has the latest on this developing story.
Terrified residents take cover as the world around them begins to shake. Late afternoon on New Year's Day, central Japan was struck by a 7.6 magnitude earthquake. It shook some buildings to the point of collapse. It's the strongest tremor on record to hit the Noto Peninsula in Ishikawa Prefecture, triggering tsunami warnings and evacuation notices across Japan's west coast.
大津波警報を石川県能登に発表しています。大きな津波を観測中です。沿岸部や川沿いにいる人はすぐに高いところへ避難をしてください。
Those tsunami warnings have since been lifted, though officials are urging people in coastal areas to continue exercising caution. Small tsunami waves have been reported as far away as South Korea's east coast, while tourists visiting ski resorts in the mountains of neighboring areas felt the force of the quake.
I think we just experienced a 7.5 earthquake. Pretty massive, if you ask me. So the whole room was shaking, the TV was shaking.
Suddenly, it get pretty strong earthquake. You can see all the snow from the electric wire goes down, and also from the roof go down, and all the car is shaking, and so everybody was panicked that time.
The full extent of the damage is still being assessed. As daylight broke on Tuesday, footage showed entire neighborhoods razed to the ground. Several deaths have already been reported, with fears that more people could be trapped underneath collapsed buildings. It brought back memories of the last major earthquake to hit Japan in 2011. That quake led to the meltdown of the Fukushima nuclear power plant. But Japanese authorities were quick to reassure the public that a nuclear power plant in the region of the New Year's Day earthquake is still operating normally.
また、志賀原子力発電所をはじめ、原子力発電所については現時点で異常がないことが確認をされております。合わせて人的物的被害については確認中です。
Dozens of aftershocks continue to rock central Japan as thousands of residents seek refuge in evacuation centers. And damage to roads is hampering rescue efforts. The Japanese Prime Minister says rescue teams are considering other options to access the worst affected areas.
これから津波警報が解除されましたので、海上輸送ルート、これが確保できることになります。このように陸上だけではなくして、空輸、それから海上輸送等を総動員して現地に。
For rescue teams, the difficult job of picking through debris for survivors is only just beginning, as Japan deals with the aftermath of yet another devastating quake. Chen and Reese Ayers for TaiwanPlus.
An opposition party leader in South Korea has been stabbed in the neck at a political event. South Korean media say Lee Jae-myung was attacked by a 67-year-old man who approached him asking him for an autograph. A suspect was arrested at a scene. The knife attack happened while Lee was touring the site of a proposed airport in the city of Busan. A hospital official says his injury is not life-threatening. Lee is one of the leaders of South Korea's main opposition Democratic Party. President Yoon Suk-yeol has condemned the attack. The death of a teenager who was stabbed at one of the nation's schools has pushed student safety up the political agenda. Rick Glauber reports from outside the Ministry of Education, where concerned parents are demanding action from the government.
Here outside Taiwan's Education Ministry, parents are demanding better protection in schools for their kids. This after a junior high school student was stabbed to death in a school not far from here in the capital, a case that shocked the nation.
我们希望针对这个办法进行一个检讨修订，希望能够还给学校一个合法合理的有法源依据的一个管理权，那辅导学生让校园的安全能够更加的一个扩大。
Violence in Taiwan schools is rare, but in just a few days, Taiwan will elect a new president and a new legislature. An issue like this can easily be whipped up into an election issue. One of the presidential candidates has already promised Juvenile Justice Act reforms if he's elected. The parents here say this government needs to act now to protect their kids. Justin Wu and Rick Lowett in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's southern cities and outlying islands have issued red alert warnings for poor air quality. Officials say air pollution in Taiwan has combined with smog that drifted in from Beijing and Shanghai. The outlying islands of Matsu and Jinmen are the most affected, as pollution there is expected to take longer to disperse. Officials are working to mitigate its impact and advise residents to wear masks. This comes as Taiwan's Environment Ministry reports an increase in the annual number of days with poor air quality over the past year. Taiwan is continuing its investigation into an oil spill that hit the country in December. Our reporter Sandy Chi explains.
Scrubbing thick black oil stuck to rocks on this beach in northern Taiwan. These volunteers have a tedious and challenging task.
这个油污啊，就因为很厚重，然后很黏，然后粘在石头上，所以我们要用这个吸油纸，要把它擦干净。
This area is just one of many coastal areas around Taiwan where oil washed onto its shores in December last year. The government says that 5.7 hectares of coastline was affected in that month alone. Taiwan's Ocean Affairs Office is using a special radar to find the source of the spill. They're trying to detect ships that might have dumped the oil, but currents and monsoon winds have slowed down their progress.
柚子湖12月2号我们那时候采样，那它是检验疑似 原油清仓的一些废油，因为目前是卫星是没有找到嘛，没有找到这样子的一个污染来源，但是我们还是有在持续的收整相关的资料。
This kind of fuel pollution is a huge threat to local wildlife and ecology.
就这边很多那个螺，然后就附在石头上面啊，然后那个油污来就把它们全部都染黑了，就像这样子。这个还在动。 可是他如果走到油污的地方就危险了。他们现在还是活着啦，可是不晓得能撑多久。
Taiwan's waters are at high risk of oil spills. The Ocean Affairs Office says there are about 19 oil spills per season. In one of the worst cases, a huge cargo ship carrying about 500 tons of fuel dumped oil into the sea in 2016, polluting the water in coastal areas in the country's north. It was the most serious case of marine pollution in a decade. But now it's 2024, and experts say not enough is being done to prevent this recurring issue.
We need something better than this, I think. If this happened every year, we should have some more strict laws or find some ways to stop this.
With no sign of when the next incident will happen, the country can only keep scrubbing one rock at a time. Klein Wong and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
After 10 years of construction and setbacks, Kaohsiung's circular light rail system is fully operational. The line is currently undergoing passenger trials. It was built in phases, with the first section opening to the public in 2015. Now that is completed, the train takes around 90 minutes to complete a loop around the southern city. Some residents worry the slow pace will increase congestion at intersections. After working in technology, a young entrepreneur returns to his hometown in southern Taiwan to work on his family goose farm. Laurel Stewart takes a look at how he's modernized the business.
With just the touch of a finger, these goose pens can add feed, self-clean and adjust temperature levels. Smart technology is revolutionizing this farm in Taiwan's southern Yunlin County, boosting efficiency and hygiene. 5 years ago, Tsai Ying-di returned to his hometown to help his father run his family goose farm. Having worked in tech, he used his expertise to improve traditional farming techniques.
我们用自然农业技术，然后用新的绿能支持农业， 然后做品牌。那实际上，它都是在面向未来的一个发展模式。
The Smart Tech model won a National Innovation and Entrepreneurship Award, beating 149 other teams from across the country.
创业硅谷里拿到冠军哦，其实是我们引领的荣耀了。那象征的是什么？像我们的年轻人返乡哦，带入了科技，带入了绿能，甚至于带入了省工的经营啊。
Every year, farmers in Taiwan have to deal with bird flu brought by migratory birds. And this year, thousands of geese, chickens, and ducks had to be culled. But this smart goose farm can help curb the spread of bird flu, providing a blueprint for other poultry farms around the country. Yet, specialists in infectious diseases say farmers also need a better understanding of how bird flu spreads.
管理的人员对于各种疾病、各种病原的这个入侵的一个概念跟知识也要同步的来提升，这样子才能够让我们投入的这个硬体设施呢达到最好的这个防治效果。
As more poultry farmers in Taiwan look to adapt their coops to keep their birds safe, this farm is showing how technology can lead the way. Leon Lian and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
A famous rubber duck is returning to Taiwan. People can catch sight of this giant duck in the southern city of Kaohsiung for 4 weeks from January 27th. The 18-meter-tall sculpture is the work of Dutch artist Florian Hoffman. It caused quite a splash when it came to Taiwan 10 years ago, attracting 4 million visitors in Kaohsiung alone. City officials hope the duck will boost tourism. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, check out this sunset in a Tunisian desert where the Star Wars movie series was filmed. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.